A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. He who loves purity of heart and has kindness on his lips, the king will be his friend. These are excerpts from the book of Proverbs. We've looked at the book of Proverbs in episode 11. If you haven't listened to that one, go check it out for a broad overview on the book of Proverbs and the lessons that we can take for us in our modern day. This episode is going to be focusing mainly on friendship and what the book of Proverbs tells us about good friends, bad friends, foolish friends. With that, let's get into it. You'll know who your friends are when you are suffering, for it is in the fire that will test your friendship. Many of friendships are lost in the midst of pain and of suffering, for it's usually the friend who is not suffering who doesn't want to walk beside you because it becomes too uncomfortable for them. They don't know what to say, so they abandon you and they leave you. And that is the worst thing a friend can do to you in the midst of your struggle. The opposite of that is a good friend will be one who walks beside you. And sometimes people you didn't think were your good friends turn out to be true friends in the midst of your suffering. And the book of Proverbs is filled with wisdom on friendship. It provides timeless insights into how we can go about building good friends, maintaining good friends, and what those entail, and also gives us a guide on what kind of friendships to avoid, what kind of people to avoid, especially what the book of Proverbs calls fools. So in Proverbs 18:24 we read, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." True friendship goes beyond casual acquaintances, and especially in this day and age of social media and our presence being mainly filled online, a true friend becomes harder and harder to find. For true friendship requires depth, requires loyalty, requires time, commitment, all of which we are very unwilling to spend. We rather spend our time growing our followings. We rather spend our time chasing clout. We rather spend our time looking good so that people will look up to us. But often what you'll find is amongst the majority of people, good friends are very, very hard to come by. Many people think that they have good friends because they hang out with them, they spend time together, going to parties, going to events. But you will only know who your good friends are when things go terribly wrong for you or something happens to you that is unexpected. I told a friend once that he had too many friends because he always talked about how many good friends he had. And he didn't expect me to say this to him because usually having many friends is a sign that you are a good person. It's a sign that people want to be your friend, people want to be in your company. But having many good friends is a sign of shallow friendship. For to get to a stage where you consider somebody a good friend means that you've spent an enormous amount of effort, of time, of commitment. You know the other person's character, their likes, their dislikes. You know them well enough that you can come and stand by their side when they are going through a tough time. But when you have too many friends, it's impossible to spend the same amount of time invested in all these friends. What you get instead are acquaintances or are shallow friendships. When you have many good friends, it's a sign that these friendships are shallow. They're like shallow rooted trees. When the storm comes, and it will, many of the friendships will break. And I'm not saying there's a particular threshold of how many good friends you can have. It varies and it goes according to the person. But what I'm suggesting instead is that good friends are not casual acquaintances that you do barbecue with once in a while, that you watch sports with every month. And when you get together, you spend most of your time gossiping, talking about sports, talking politics, talking weather. Nothing about character, nothing about virtue, nothing about what the good is, nothing about wisdom. Whereas a good friend is somebody who desires and wills your good. And by good meaning somebody who encourages you in your virtues, in your characters. Someone who speaks truth to you, even when it is difficult. Somebody who's willing to tell you that you are wrong when you are doing something foolish. Somebody who stands beside you when you are suffering. Someone who sharpens you intellectually. Somebody who sharpens you spiritually, pushes you, encourages you. Someone who you can confide in. These are all signs of a good friend. And these are what Proverbs tells us are characteristics of good friends. So I read from Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. True friends are not fair-weathered companions. They show up in both the joyful and the challenging times of your life. You can contrast this with friendships that are superficial, that only exist when things are easy, things are going well and smooth, and they want to celebrate with you during these times, but they don't want to be beside you when you are going through a challenging time. And so it is only in those times that brother is born, somebody like your blood brother, somebody who will, later on, Proverbs says, who's closer to you than your blood brother. This develops because of a trust that is built in the midst of these turbulent times, these ups and these downs in our lives. Trust is at the heart of any real friendship. And that is why a good friend is someone you can confide in, somebody who sharpens you intellectually, spiritually, somebody who is there beside you. You are able to discuss the important perennial questions of life with them without feeling like you are being judged. And all of this requires trust. Without trust, you cannot have a real friendship, and ultimately a good friendship. And what betrays trust more than anything else is gossip. And that's why Proverbs 11:13 says, a gossip betrays a friendship, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. And on the point about good friends speaking truth to you, Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Very strange wording here. I'll repeat, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. What this means is that your friends, your good friends will stab you in the front. Right? Your good friends are the ones you can trust that the things they're saying to you, even though they might be hurtful to you, that it might sting, words that you don't want to hear, say they believe you are making a mistake doing a particular thing. You might not want to hear it because you are in the midst of enjoying whatever it is that you're doing and you feel like you are doing it really well and you might be very successful at this. But a good friend, because they will your good, they desire your good, they want you to be not the best version of yourself, not to be the best version of yourself in this sort of new age self-help movement, but they want you to embody your virtues, as the Stoics always talk about. They want you to be somebody who embodies the virtues of what the good is, of being honest, of being trustworthy, of being courageous. Because they want these things from you, they are willing to say that which would be difficult for you to hear. And that is why Proverbs says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And that means being a good friend results in offering hard but necessary truth at times. Whereas your enemy, a fool, which Proverbs goes on to say, A fool will kiss you profusely, will always compliment you, will never tell you you're doing wrong, and in so doing, they lead you down the path of destruction. If you remember the episode on Jesus, Jesus talks about the narrow path and the wide path, the narrow road and the wide road. And he says, many people take the wide road because it is easy. Very few take the road that is narrow because it is hard. And faithful and good friends are the ones who are willing to take this narrow path, to tell you you are wrong if they believe that you are wrong. And it is because they trust that you trust in what they are saying, in the advice they're giving. You can disagree, but a good friend will be willing to put themselves out there for your sake. And Proverbs 10:11 also says, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. A good friend ultimately is also one who is working on their virtues, cultivating it. Somebody who's filled with wisdom, and that's why their mouth is a fountain of life, because the advice they give you, the conversations that you have, the time you spend together, they ultimately fill you up. To use a modern term, they energize you versus sucking the life out of you. That's what a good friend does, right? They give you life, whereas a fool, an enemy, always will suck the life out of you. Many, many years ago, a friend of mine and I got into a heated debate, and it was at a point where it felt like our friendship was going to end, because we were going back and forth over some particular situation that had taken place. And near the end of the argument, both of us realized through conversation, very heated conversation, where both of us failed as friends. And I realized the mistake that I had made, and he realized the mistake that he had made. But it required the honest conversation, very heated, honest conversation of going back and forth. And ultimately, after that conversation, our friendship grew stronger. We apologized, forgave each other, and that was it. And it's funny because sometimes being a good friend doesn't always mean that it's happy-go-lucky within your friendship. Sometimes you need that heated exchange that takes place when you are debating over your beliefs, debating over your actions. These are all needed because, as Proverbs later says, iron sharpens iron. And that is what friendship should do. It should always sharpen you. Now, the opposite of this are bad friends, are what Proverbs calls fools or enemies. But before we get there, the other thing about friendship is Proverbs also lays out how you should be friends and what you should do within the friendship. And the reason I brought up that example with my friend is that Proverbs 10:12 says, hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all wrong. At first glance, it makes it seem like conflict is stirred up by hatred, and that friendship should only be about love and peace. But what Proverbs is getting here at is on the power of forgiveness in maintaining friendships. When you are in friendship with another, not only is there trust, but there is love involved, right? There is what the Greeks call philia. It's a love of friendship or love within a friendship. And this love within a friendship allows for there to be conflict when you're trying to solve an issue, allows the parties to exchange ideas within a context where both know that if one misspeaks, if the other gets offended, if the other is hurt, both are willing to forgive each other. Understanding that love will forgive any offenses that takes place, whereas gossips and grudges are ultimately what will destroy friendships. And so Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And like I mentioned earlier, you need that sharpening that takes place, right? And sometimes that sharpening is heated. It's not necessarily that you're trying to make fun of the other person, trying to destroy them, but it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of you or them desiring your best, your good. And it's not necessarily the good of subjective good. It's not a type of subjective good where somebody says, oh, I think this will be good for you because I saw somebody else do this. But it's objective goodness insofar as having courage, for example, is better than being a coward. Discipline is better than laziness. Truthfulness is better than dishonesty. These are universal goods. Good that whoever embodies these virtues, these characters, are ultimately going to become better men and women. And so a friend is somebody who's willing to engage in dialogue with you so that you become more courageous, you become more temperate, you become more loving. But sometimes that requires a conflict which takes place. And again, the conflict takes place within a setting where if you're good friends, you understand that the other person is not trying to tear you down. Good friends help each other grow in wisdom, grow in character, and healthy friendship challenges us to become better people who embody the virtues. And ultimately, this can only happen when there's trust between each other and mutual accountability and encouragement. The other verse that stood out on how to be a friend is Proverbs 25:11. Like apples of gold in settings of silver is a ruling rightly given. And this is important into this conversation because sometimes being a good friend is knowing when to say what you want to say and knowing when to say what you should say. Being a good friend is not a license for you to just say whatever's on your mind at that point in time. It's understanding that certain wisdom, certain words of advice are best said at appropriate times. If you say it at the wrong time, then the other person will take it wrongly, and you know they'll take it wrongly, but there's a sense in which today the idea of you must be authentic, be your best self, be you, don't worry about what other people think. I disagree with it on one hand and I agree with it on the other. I agree with it in that you should be yourself. You shouldn't be pretending to be somebody else. But that's where my agreement ends. I disagree with it more because it seems to give people the license to simply offend people for the sake of offending people, saying things like, oh, it's just me. I'm being myself. I don't care what I do to others. I'll simply be true to myself. I'll say whatever comes to my mind. I'll do whatever action that comes to my mind. Even if it hurts somebody, it doesn't matter because I'm being true to myself. That's the most important thing. And this is a fool. This is your enemy. This is never going to be a good friend. And this is also somebody who doesn't understand what it means to have good character, what it means to be virtuous. This is somebody who has been deluded by the new age postmodern idea that character is subjective, that you can be whoever you want, and most importantly, you can be yourself, and being yourself means never having to change. If you're greedy, you never have to stop being greedy. If you are foolish, you never have to stop being foolish. If you are weak, you never have to become strong. But that is a lie. And that is why Proverbs 25:11 says, like apples of gold in settings of silver is a ruling rightly given. A thoughtful word of advice at the right time is much better than an essay of thoughtful things at the wrong time. Now, this leads us into bad friends, or as I've mentioned before, fools or enemies. So Proverbs 1:10-19 reads, My son, if sinful men entice you, Do not give in to them. If they say, "Come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless souls. Let's swallow them alive like the grave and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will all share the loot. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it." So this passage warns us against being seduced by sinful friends, by bad friends, by fools. And what's very clear is bad friends will lead us down a destructive path. They will tempt us. They will encourage us to commit evil, to commit immoral things for some sort of materialistic gain. So it's common, because everybody wants to have friends, that we will become friends with the first person that is nice to us, that speaks to us, so on and so forth. There are friends who, let's say you are wanting to reduce your alcohol on the weekends. There are friends who say, "That's great. Let's keep you in settings where there's less alcohol so you drink less alcohol." Whereas the opposite exists. Friends who will say, "You know what? You're trying to reduce alcohol, but hey, I am turning 37 tomorrow. Let's go party." And you say, no, I don't want to do it. They'll say, "Oh," they'll make you feel bad. And they drag you out, and then you spend that night drinking away. And then you wake up on Saturday feeling absolutely hammered, and you're regretting every decision. Obviously, in these two examples, it's very easy to tell who your good friends are. The good friends are the ones who encourage habits that are healthy. The bad friends are the ones who encourage destructive habits. And they purposely go against what it is that you believe. They don't uphold the integrity. They don't trust your decision. And so Proverbs 14:7 says this about them: "Stay away from a fool, for you will not find knowledge on their lips." Bad friends are fools. They don't care about you. They only care about themselves and their pleasures. And this is why they will drag you down to metaphorical hell with them. On their lips you will find gossip. They will gossip about you when you are not around. They will speak poorly about you and how much of a fool you are and how you don't keep to your word, even though they're the ones who led you to break your bond with yourself. But when you meet them, when you hang out with them, they will praise you. They will pour kisses upon you, as we read earlier in Proverbs 27:6. "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." And so Proverbs says, you will not find knowledge on their lips. Why? Because they care only about themselves, about the pleasures of this world. They are stuck to this material world. When Proverbs says fool, it doesn't mean an idiot, right? It doesn't mean somebody who is stupid. You can have intelligent people who are foolish. You can have successful people who are foolish. And our world is filled with plenty of examples of this. Fools are simply those without wisdom. Wisdom is one of those things that cannot be bought, just like love can never be bought. Wisdom cannot be traded. Wisdom is only gained through contemplation and through seeking after wisdom yourself. And so these friends, these bad friends, are called foolish because they care not about wisdom. They only care about themselves, about the pleasure. They care about anything but wisdom. For if they gain wisdom, they know that they will despise themselves, and so they avoid wisdom at all cost, potentially until the very end of their life when they realize that all that they have done has been a mistake. So Proverbs says, stay away from a fool, for you will not find knowledge on their lips. Even when they give you advice, the advice is always going to be skewed towards something that's not good for you. Hence, a bad friend will seduce you away from wisdom, right, from the treasure in the field. So Proverbs 10:11 says, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Proverbs 22:24-25 reads, do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. Toxic friendship, bad friendships that involve anger, jealousy, manipulation usually wear us down emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. And so Proverbs says here, do not associate with them. Distance yourself away from these people. Do not be their friends. Do not bring them into your life and allow them to destroy your life. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't engage with them. It doesn't mean that you should try to help them. But it is that you should be careful that their way of life does not impact your life negatively. So you should always extend grace to these people, but you should not allow their lifestyle and their foolishness to entrap you and seduce you away from wisdom. And so when it reads, do not make friends with a hot-tempered person, do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. On a plain reading, you might think that anger is bad, so anybody who gets angry, you should stay away from them. But you have to remember, anger itself is not bad. It is when anger is directed or misdirected, that is when it is bad. There is such a thing as righteous anger when your blood boils at an injustice. Right, this should happen. Your blood should boil when injustice happens if your character is aligned with the good. And this is because your intuition becomes one with the good. So then when you see injustice, you get angry. And when I mean your intuition becomes one with the good, I always think about the verse from Confucius when he says, at 15, my heart was set on learning. At 30, I stood firm. At 40, I had no more doubts. At 50, I knew the mandate of heaven. At 60, my ear was obedient. At 70, I could follow my heart's desire without transgressing the norm. Meaning, by the time that he's 70, what he desires and what was good became one. They weren't at odds with each other. And this is ultimately only possible through wisdom. And bad friends and foolish friends are the ones who pull you away from this. So Proverb here warns us of people who get angry simply without a rationale. They just have a hot temper for the sake of having a hot temper. And they have never cultivated or worked on toning their anger down and directing it elsewhere. Yeah, they get triggered at the smallest thing. Someone bumps into them on the street, they blow up. Somebody insults them when they're driving, they blow up. These are friends, Proverbs says, you should not associate with them. You should be careful about them. Now, the other verse that comes up that I liked was Proverbs 27:9. Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and the pleasantness of a friend springs from their heartfelt advice. A good friend's encouragement and advice are among some of the most joyful and uplifting things you can experience. And this is because you trust them. You trust their words. You trust what they are saying. And so when they encourage you, they give you advice, there is a joy that takes place that is different than most other things. And so the challenges for this week, one is to be, based on this last one, be intentional about offering words of wisdom and honest counsel to your friends, especially if they're going through something difficult. Do not say whatever's on your mind at all times. Think about it. Make sure you share your words at the appropriate time. Second thing is, related to the above, check in with your friends regularly. Not just during crisis, not just whenever you feel like it, but have a habit of connecting with them, speaking with them, making sure that you are sharpening each other. And this is important, especially when you are maintaining friendships. And the third thing is be quick to forgive and humble enough to apologize when you're wrong, and sometimes when you're not wrong. For friendships to take place that are deeply rooted, you need the space, if I can use that term, to be one of trust, knowing that you can share your thoughts with them honestly without them abandoning you and abandoning the friendship. And if they do, that's fine. It means they're never your friends to begin with. So, with that, I'll wrap. Thank you for listening to this episode. Episode 50 is coming up. I'm very excited for that. Share this episode with your good friend and tell them how much they mean to you. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, do subscribe. Give it a thumbs up on YouTube if you're listening to it on there. Otherwise, give it a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple. And if you enjoy my work in reviving wisdom in our modern day, do consider supporting my work on Substack or on Patreon. Thank you to all those who are already subscribed. Until next week, peace.